Hello everyone, welcome. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another lesson in our ongoing French course. To watch all the lessons in order, I've placed a link in the description so you can look for that for the entire French course. In this lesson, we are going to have a brief look at the verb espérer, which means to hope. It's a very important verb that is used very often to talk about our hopes, wishes, desires. Let's take a look at the origin of this word espérer. It comes from the Latin sperare, which originally meant to wait. Later, it took on the meaning of to hope. In French, of course, this is where we get the verb espérer, to hope. In Spanish, if you're familiar with Spanish, esperar, which interestingly enough in Spanish means to wait and to hope simultaneously. It just depends on the context. I do have a channel for Spanish. The link is in the description. For Italian, the verb is also sperare, identical to the Latin, which means to hope. So also from this verb in Latin, we have some English words. The first one here, you're probably not familiar with it. I actually was not. I found this in my research. Spirit, which means hoped for, and it was actually a legal term, and it had to do with debt collecting. So if the debt was spirit, it means that you had a reasonable chance of collecting it. In other words, you could hope that it would be collected. Now, the other English words that you probably will recognize are desperate, which is hopeless. The prefix here basically means without, so without hope, hopeless, and also the verb to despair, which means to lose hope, same thing. The prefix means the opposite, so without hope or to lose hope. So that's a quick look at the history. So back to the verb espérer in French. Now, this is one of those regular verbs that has a spelling change. It belongs to a different category. There are other verbs that are similar to this, and I'll show you those verbs in just a minute. So let's go ahead and take a look at how this verb changes as we conjugate it. So the endings are still the same endings that you know for regular ER verbs. You just attach those to the root. And remember, to find the root, you remove the ER. So here we have the root. Now when I add my ending, take a look at what happens. There's a spelling change. The E accent aigu changes to the E accent grave when we add the ending. So the root will change, but only slightly. It's just considered a spelling change verb. The root doesn't change radically. Before I show you the remaining forms, remember the previous group of spelling change verbs that we had? The change occurred in all of the forms except for the nu and the vu. It's going to be the same with this class of spelling change verbs. Okay, so let's continue. So we start with our root, and then we add the ending. Remember, it's es for tu, and watch the change occur as we add it. So there it is. Tu espères. J'espère. I hope. Tu espères. Espère, espère. Tu espères. J'espère. Il, elle, on. We start with our root, and we add the ending, which is identical to the je. And of course, the spelling change occurs again. Il espère, elle espère, on espère. Nous, we have our root, and then we add the ending, and there's no change in the new form. Also the vous, no change. We have our root, and then the ending. So we have for nous, nous espérons, we hope. Vous espérez, you hope. And then our last form here, the il, elle form, we start with our root, and you will have the spelling change again in this form. So ils espèrent, elles espèrent. So there you have it, the verb espérer in the present tense. Remember that learning how to conjugate one verb is so much more powerful than just memorizing a few phrases. Once you know how to conjugate a verb and what it means, you can really begin expressing many ideas with just that one verb. So let's look at some examples. What can you do with this verb? Let's put it into context. Well, if you simply want to say, I hope, I'm sure you know the answer. It's j'espère, j'espère, I hope. You might hear somebody say that. j'espère, I hope. Whatever you're talking about, they're affirming whatever your hope is. They might say, yes, I hope, j'espère. A very useful expression is the expression, I hope so. The really is generally implied in this expression. So I hope so is adding the word bien after espère. So if you hear somebody say, j'espère bien, that means I hope so, I really hope so. So whatever it is you're talking about, and you're hoping that something is going to happen, the other person can affirm that by saying, j'espère bien, or you can affirm that by saying, j'espère bien, I hope so. Another common expression is to say, I hope that, and then after the that, you include some other type of subject and verb. So let's look at an example. Well, let's look at I hope that first. So how would you say I hope that? That would be j'espère que. I hope that. So you have to add something else here. So let's look at an example. Maybe I made a whole lot of food and you're coming over to my house. I might say, ooh, I hope that you're hungry because I have a lot of food. Well, in French, if you want to say, I hope that you are hungry, it's very simple. You just start with the j'espère que, I hope that. You know how to say you are hungry. We've had the avoir expressions in previous lessons. So remember, think about it. How do you say you are hungry? Let's randomly choose the vous here. So vous, remember you don't use to be with these expressions. You use the verb avoir. You literally have to say you have hunger to say you are hungry. So j'espère que vous avez faim. J'espère que vous avez faim. I hope that you are hungry. Okay, so that gives you just a small idea of what you can do with this verb, just a few examples. Now let me show you what other verbs are like espérer. What other verbs are going to have this spelling change where the accent aigu changes to the accent grave in all of the forms except for the nous or the vous. Well, we start with the verb préférer, which is a very important verb. Actually, that's going to be our next lesson. We're going to take a look at that verb. So préférer is a very powerful verb. Répéter, to repeat. Exagérer, to exaggerate. And the verb protéger, to protect. Okay, so all of these verbs have this similar spelling change when you conjugate them. The accent aigu changes to the accent grave. So here, 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 and here. So be sure to check out our short videos and playlists for more examples of the verb espérer in the present tense. That's it for this lesson. Thanks so much for watching. If you found it helpful, I would appreciate it very, very much if you'd give it a like. Subscribers, thank you so much for your support. To go on to another lesson, click on the video that appears here on your screen. See you soon. À bientôt.